What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with another video, and today we've got the box office breakdown for the weekend of February 14th to February 16th. Very sorry that this one's coming in later than usual. Just came back from a trip. It was great. Got to visit a monastery and spend some time with some Benedictine monks. Had some time of prayer and had some fun. It was great. So thank you so much for your patience. But today, of course, we have a lot of things to talk about with the box office because the biggest news of the day, of course, is Sonic the Hedgehog, the film that was set to flop. The film that was likely going to be one of the biggest box office failures in the year 2019 decided to push it back because they said, hey, the fans don't like the design. Had one of the most disliked trailer videos in modern day history. And guess what? Jeffrey Fowler came out and said, hey, you know what? The fans don't like this design. The fans have issues. Let me listen to their concerns. And you know what, fans? You're onto something. You know what? Maybe you as fans, as people that have been consuming the product for years and years and years, maybe you might be onto something that some of these Hollywood elites and some of these creative artists might not have the same connection to. I wonder. And guess what? Decides, hey, we're going to go ahead and push this back. We're going to go ahead and get this right. We're going to get the design right. We're going to try and get it as perfect as possible. And guess what happens? A few months later, a new trailer comes out, gets a lot of likes, gets a lot of interest up, and it goes from expecting to make between $10 and $20 million in its opening weekend back in the day when it had that original release date to now making domestically $57 million. And if this number holds, this will be more than Detective Pikachu's domestic opening. Detective Pikachu opened to around $54 million domestically. Now, to be fair to Detective Pikachu did have a wider, worldwide gross. It made more internationally than what Sonic the Hedgehog is expected to make internationally, but still very impressive nonetheless that here in the States, Sonic the Hedgehog is doing as well as it is. And of course, this is much better than last weekend's #1 film of Birds of Prey, which has now dropped to #1, making $17.1 million, a 48% drop, which if this was any other film, and if this film had made a crap ton of money in its opening weekend, 48% drop is actually not that bad. It's actually not that terrible. In fact, even Skyboy Medicine over at Forbes.com went on to say that, oh yeah, it's okay. It's not the end of the road, but it's also not exactly perfect for them either. Basically saying that it's make or break, that depending on how the weekend, the third, fourth, fifth weekends go, and whether or not it's able to keep attendance up, it's likely either going to lose money, which is what my projection is going to be, or it could make barely any profit, which for a film from DC, with a film from Warner Brothers, you don't want to have your Birds of Prey, your big, oh my gosh, wham empowerment film to be just profitable, or in more likelihood, being a film that ends up losing money. But let's go ahead into the other films. So Sonic the Hedgehog came in strong with $57 million in less screens than Birds of Prey, by the way. So that's freaking awesome. As you can see, $13,000 per theater versus $4,000 per theater. That is freaking amazing. Not to mention, if you look at the total domestic gross, in one weekend, Sonic the Hedgehog has basically matched what Birds of Prey took 2 weekends to make. If that does not tell you about how there is something very wrong, because guess what? Birds of Prey could have been in a similar situation. Had Birds of Prey been an actual adaptation of the comics, had actually been respectful of the comic book characters, had actually listened to the fans of people that wanted to go see the story, guess what? Birds of Prey will be right up there with Sonic the Hedgehog. We'll be making as much, possibly even more money, especially with the amount of star power that you had in the film. Ewan McGregor, not a small name. Margot Robbie, not a small name. And yet what they decided to do was they decided to go woke. And guess what? There's a good chance that they could easily go broke. And some people are arguing whether it went woke in the film or not. I'm arguing that it went woke in its marketing campaign because it made it very clear they only wanted a certain audience to show up for it. And as I mentioned in a video over on the Odin's Movie Vlog channel, when you look at the actual statistical breakdown, more men went to go see the movie than women, which means not only did men not see it, but women who it was made for apparently, didn't go to see it either. Fantasy Island, another new release from Sony, came out this weekend. Looks pretty interesting based on the premise. It's $12.4 million at around 2,700 screens. The Photograph, a film I had never heard of from Universal, made $12.2 million. Bad Boys for Life dropped down to #5, but it has made so much money and it is very profitable at this point that any extra money it makes at this point is just extra raw gain, raw profit. 1917 continues to do well after all of its award season buzz, and also, of course, it being a great film. Jumanji: The Next Level is probably the most impressive on here. It's been out for 10 weeks and yet still is in the top 10, unlike another film that's been out for only 9 weeks, Rise of Skywalker, coming in here, number 15 now, making a whopping $1.267 million. And as I've said constantly before, it consistently has these 45 to 50% drops week in and week out. Now it is only at 992 screens versus Jumanji: The Next Level, which is still playing at 2,410 screens. If that does not tell you about a clear difference about, hey, this is what a successful movie looks like, this is what Passion looks like. It's been out for so long, it actually had an increase after being out for 10 weeks. It is still losing theaters because obviously it's been out forever, and yet it is still making money. In fact, based on this, it's been out for almost 2 months, and the film is still making multiple millions of dollars, while Rise of Skywalker continues to barely come to be a film that really, in all likelihood, is barely profitable. We don't even have the official numbers of what they spent on marketing for that film, but like giving them even just the benefit of the doubt, it is still a film that is coming in, yeah, that's right, underneath Joker. It is still not as far as not as raw profits go. But as far as actual box office, it is still about $9 million underneath where Joker ended up, which to me is fantabulous, taking a word out of Harley Quinn's book. So as you can see, Sonic the Hedgehog has made $57 million here in the States, and also the entire domestic marketplace as well. Some people get triggered every time I say that, saying, there's more to the United States than in the domestic marketplace. And I'm like, okay, go ahead and keep complaining. That's okay. I don't, Canada, yeah. Anyway, now I'm sure I've just pissed off a bunch of Canadians. But anyway, so Sonic the Hedgehog, you don't have the foreign totals here yet, but based on certain estimates from places like Deadline.com and Hollywood Reporter, it is said that the film reached around $100 million internationally. A lot of those numbers are going to be coming in tomorrow, especially since a lot of these places are going to be tracking the 4-day total, with tomorrow being President's Day here in the States. Birds of Prey has crossed $142 million, and there was actually an interesting story earlier because I had a bunch of people attacking me on my last video saying, oh, your math is wrong, your numbers are wrong, because according to Box Office Mojo, you're missing like $60 million. What actually happened was Box Office Mojo, which is now a complete garbage tier site, by the way, ever since IMDb took over and they had their entire redesign so that you have to pay for certain features that used to be free. Yeah, don't ever go there anymore because it sucks. What ended up happening was someone decided to move a couple decimal points in a couple of the marketplaces and ended up adding an extra like $60 to $80 million that did not actually exist in the first place. And so I pointed out these people, whether or not they heard it or not, I don't know. But this is the actual worldwide total at this point in time, $142.8 million, which for most films would be okay. But when your film costs roughly $100 million to make, again, depending on certain estimates and depending on certain sources, not really all that impressive. And we'll get into what the film will likely make and likely lose in a second. Fantasy Island making $20 million across the entire world. Actually, interestingly enough, because this film costs so little to make, it is already in the position of it being profitable at this point in time. It's already, been able to break that break-even number. And then, as I mentioned before, Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker, as you can see, and I'll refresh it just in case, it's at $1,061 million, very much $9 million still behind the Joker's $1,070 million. And here is that infamous Excel sheet that I love to play around with. So as you can see, Sonic the Hedgehog with $100 million worldwide is currently sitting at negative $82 million based off of the actual cost. So it actually cost $142.5 million to make. That's including the production cost and the projected marketing cost as well. This number will go down as the weeks go on because it had a very strong opening weekend, seems to have very positive reviews from fans. Doesn't really matter what the critics say because the critics, we all know, are in the pockets of all the major studios and only will, push forward movies like Birds of Prey that go along with their agenda because, can't have anything else. So that number will definitely go down. I imagine that this film will be very profitable. We'll have a better idea next weekend once we get that week 1 to week 2 drop off, which I suspect to be around the 50% range, which is pretty standard. And we'll also be at the point probably of getting at least close to profitability by next weekend, if not just barely at that point. Fantasy Island, as you can see, is already profitable, making $1.5 million in net gain profits, which again, kudos to you. First weekend out because your film only cost $7 million to make, meant the actual total cost was $10.5 million with marketing. Good job, Fantasy Island. I've heard terrible things about you. You're a Blumhouse film, but Blumhouse films don't have to be good because they can make any film, it seems, make it for no money whatsoever, get big stars somehow, like Michael Pena, and then say, oh yeah, people will still go to see it nonetheless. The Photograph film that just came out is at negative $16 million. Who knows whether that'll break even or not? It's, again, a very small budget film, only $16 million to make, $24 million with marketing. But I haven't heard of it. I'm sure most of you haven't heard of it, so yeah, why bother? Right now, Birds of Prey is sitting at negative $59 million, and based on the estimates, and if these numbers are going to hold, the film is going to have a minimum amount of money. So what is least likely, or rather the lowest amount of money that it could make would be $204 million. The maximum will be $285 million, with the average, the most likely number being $244, which means it's either going to lose $23 million It'll either gain 25 million, best case scenario, or in all likelihood will probably get closer to around 1.3 million in net gain and profit. So it's looking like this film actually has a chance to make some money back. However, based off the fact that this film seems to be dropping off pretty heavily, not just in the United States and domestic marketplace, but also across the world as well, it'll be interesting to see whether it gets closer to that 70% in the first 2 weeks or 50%. Again, we'll follow that as we continue to go on. Rhythm section continues to be just awful. Actually, to be honest, I haven't updated the section yet. Either way, it's going to be a giant loss of money because it's just awful. Gretel and Hansel, again, it did indeed go pretty woke with the titling of the film. I haven't seen the film itself, but it actually is profitable, so got to give that some credit there. And as I mentioned before, 1917 is now looking pretty dang good with $43 million in net gain, net profit, while films like a Boss are in the negative. Cats is still roughly around $100 million in the negative. Also, Spies in the Skies at negative $68 million. And luckily, we've got here Uncut Gems, which is very close to being profitable. However, based off of the fact that it likely didn't cost as much because of tax credits, things like that, it's already looking to sit at profitability. But anyway, what are your thoughts about this? Again, this film not beating Joker, based on the fact that it's at less than 1,000 screens and it's only making $1 million in a weekend. I just don't see this film making the money up to be able to beat Joker. Internationally, it seems to have slowed down pretty far too. So I'll be watching this movie as we go out through the week. Fantasy Island, have you seen it yet? Do you think it's worth the profitability that's gone to this point? Birds of Prey, are you happy to see the fact that Sonic the Hedgehog, in all likelihood, will bypass Birds of Prey by next weekend, which is just freaking awesome? And also, of course, what are your thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog? I was not able to see it because, my wife was sick on Thursday, when I was originally planning to go see it, and I've been out of town ever since. So I'm going to try and see it probably sometime tomorrow since I will be off to add to the President's Day weekend total. But let me know your thoughts about this and all the things we talked about in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash the like button, give us a subscribe, it helps us a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.